This is LING 270, Language, Technology, and Society. I'm Brennan Dell, and I'll be the instructor for this module. So in this lesson, we'll be starting Module 4, talking about printing and society. So the definition of printing is the process of reproducing an image. This is a technology that is very ancient. And reproducing an image not only involves the recreation of artwork and things like that, but it also involves the reproduction of text. So this is a kind of language technology. The ability to reproduce text allows you to make much more text than you would be able to otherwise. And because of this, it can allow a message to spread much more quickly. And so because of this, printing actually has a very profound societal impact, because printing affects the way that text can be created and disseminated as well. In this module, we'll talk a lot about Gutenberg's printing press, which can be interpreted as one of the first inventions of mass communication. So it might seem insignificant today, but in fact, it had a very profound societal impact, and we'll talk about that in this module. In fact, his printing press is sometimes considered one of the most significant inventions of mankind, the printing press, along with things like fire and the wheel. In this module, we'll go in detail into all these ways that printing had impacted society. So first we'll kind of go a little more into the definition of what printing is. So we'll notice that when we just study the development of printing that there are three important components that go into it. And making a better printing system involves improving each of these aspects. So one thing to keep in mind is to pay attention to the medium that is printed on. So when you're printing, you are making an image on some sort of material. Usually in the printing that we're familiar with, this is paper, but that can also be things like vellum or maybe papyrus or clay. And so there are all kinds of printing media that have been developed over the centuries. And we'll see that it's actually Gutenberg's idea of using paper was actually very significant in making the printing press a viable invention. So the medium that's printed on is just as important part of the printing process as the rest of the technology. Secondly, an important component of the technology is the actual printer. So this is the object which has the image that can be used to make multiple copies. So in the module, we'll talk about how movable type can be created. So a printing press also involved making important advancements in how the printer works. And finally, the last thing, which is very important, is using a kind of force. So reproducing an image oftentimes requires a great deal of force. And new mechanisms have been developed over the years, which make it easier to apply more force and at a faster rate to increase the rate of printing. So yeah, it's important when we're discussing printing to look at all these three different components, and developments were important for each of them to make printing a really successful technology and for it to have the profound societal impact that it did. So there are quite a few ways that printing has impacted society by the virtue of the fact that it is a kind of mass communication. We'll look at them in this module. In particular, we'll look how printing impacted religious reform in Europe. We'll look how it affected the idea of national identity in Europe as well, how it developed the news and the newspapers, how it affected the scientific revolution, the Enlightenment, advancements in business, and also law and legal concepts. The effects of printing are not limited to just these, but it's important to realize that printing has had a very profound impact on society. So by the end of this module, what you should have learned is the history of printing technologies, how it has been developed over time, and how it is in the modern day. We'll notice that Gutenberg actually plays a minor role. Printing is actually a very old technology, and it is still being advanced in the modern day. So you'll be learning about that in this module. Secondly, you should learn which specific contributions Gutenberg actually made to printing. So Gutenberg didn't invent printing out of whole cloth. He really made relatively minor advancements on technologies which already existed. Nonetheless, he is probably given an outsized credit for the invention of the printing press. So by the end of this module, you should know which contributions he made and which were made by other individuals. And yeah, the kinds that had existed before him. And finally, you should learn how the invention of printing has impacted society. As I mentioned, it's a kind of mass communication and it affected very many aspects of society. So we'll be talking about that in this module as well.